Hello and welcome to another episode of Murphy's Law. I'm Eric Murphy, and I have got a really fun episode to go over today. It is one that I still enjoy watching, even after the fact, even after it's passed. I've gone back over this and went, you know what? It was good. And with me today is V LaBianca. V, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing really, really well. I saw your episode with Shannon.
It was so much fun.
It was really good. I enjoyed it. Yeah, even when I'm not on, I know I get a little antsy, but watching y'all, it was fantastic. I really loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, getting comfortable in the host seat.
Good. Alrighty. I'm ready to dive into this clip. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's get that intro. Tyler in Mississippi. You're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about today? Do you remember Tyler?
I remember Tyler.
Ooh.
I do indeed.
Okay. Well, then we're going to dive right into it. I'll give his claim.
My argument is that the coronavirus proves the existence of the God of the Bible because the coronavirus epidemic was prophesied in the Bible in Revelation chapter 6 and Matthew chapter 24.
Of course it was.
Of course. Clearly.
So tell me if this rings a bell for you, but everything that we saw in the news was a sign of the end times. If there was something going on anywhere in the world, if there was a world leader, every time there was a presidential election, it was a sign of the Antichrist. I mean, everything. I remember when the EU decided to kind of move to the euro. They're saying, oh, see, one world government, they're all moving to one single currency. Next thing, they're going to be tattooing us all with the sign of the beast.
Oh, yeah, no, I thoroughly believed that the end times would be certainly before 2010. So, yeah, like anywhere between like 2000 to 2010, like that was the range. That was when it was going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I think 13-year-old Eric was on his knees crying in prayer when the clock struck midnight on Y2K, when the year 2000 came, because we all thought we were going. So hearing this kind of claim, it's not surprising that people would be saying the coronavirus is a sign of the end times. But, I don't know. I guess I just didn't want it. You know, I just didn't, I didn't want to believe that people would try and capitalize on it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we dealt with it. So now we just need to direct people to that call. Like, someone was going to bring it up. Yeah. Might as well have been this guy.
Absolutely. It's funny. We started asking questions about, well, how do you know that this is what is predicted? You know, this is, how do you know this is the prophecy? And, well, there were all these other epidemics that have happened in the past. And he had this novel response.
Well, yes, but that was before 1492 when, Columbus discovered America for the second time after Vikings.
Wait. Are you saying that 1492 was predicted in the... blew my mind.
Well, in 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah, I grew up very, American-centric, very nationalist. This view of Christianity and America kind of intertwined, but that was new for me. That was out of left field.
It really kind of felt like of course, this is where we're going moment. And y'all actually went into a bit of a conversation where he was saying, it's because of the rise of globalism.
Right, exactly. We were talking about global pandemics. He was like, oh, well, there was no global pandemic because America hadn't been invented yet. And
therefore,
only when after America was invented can we even consider the idea that something would be global, because America is what makes the world go round, or however the reasoning was. But yeah, it was very American-centric in a really weird and like unnerving way.
It was. And we went down that road for just a little while. And then I've got to commend you. I wanted to grab some of these clips because you started holding the line when it comes to prophecy. And that's what I really want to do as a host. And I know that I've done it in the past, and seeing you stick to it and hold him accountable to these claims about prophecy was just fantastic. I want to show a clip here.
Tyler, I've got a question. For you. Let's move to the concept of this being predicted. If this was predicted, then I'm assuming you know what happens next.
Nice.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's only reasonable, right?
Well, it is, and also you're creating a way to falsify the claim. It's
Right.
Okay, you're tying all of this to what's happened in the past, so let's make a claim that happens in the future and test about whether or not it happens. And his response,
the tribulation and
No, that's too broad. Give me more specific. What's something more specific that we can look for in the next month that will back this up?
Mwah. It was good. It was good. And again, tribulation. I read the Left Behind series, the Youth Left Behind series as a kid, and then I started getting into the older Left Behind series when I got older. But like, this was just bringing back so many memories.
Oh yeah, it's almost weird to me that the dialogue hasn't changed at all. The words that are used, the sentence structure, the explanations given. It's unnerving how familiar it is, because it feels not only dishonest. I'm not assuming that this person was particularly dishonest. In fact, they seemed very much adamant in their belief, but it's coming up against this brainwashing concept, right? And this thing where you're saying exactly the same thing that I did. I've never met you. We're from different states. We're from different churches. We're from different walks of life. We're different ages. Literally nothing in common except that we're both on this show right now. And you're saying everything I was taught to say. Like, that's always a red flag. That is never a good thing.
So I remember first challenging some of these ideas, actually, and looking back at history. And it was learning about the Second Great Awakening. When there were just all of these wild religions that were springing up along the East Coast, where you have Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses and a bunch of other, smaller kind of faiths spring up. It wasn't really until then that that was an early grounding for me in asking some of these questions. But yeah, this was just, it was just good. I've got plenty of others here. So you were saying, what's going to happen in the next month? And his response.
Well, maybe not necessarily the next month, but in the upcoming years, we can look for nations rising against nations.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that sounds unique and different and not at all like things that happen all the time.
Yeah. And so we went on about that for a little bit. We tried to challenge it. He went right back to scripture.
6, when it was talking about the fourth horse, the pale horse, when it said that the name that who sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth.
Okay, how many wars right now are being fought with swords?
I mean, it's a valid question.
It
I
is.
also like how bored I looked while he was quoting scripture. I was just like, oh.
Right? Yeah. At least give us something a little flavorful, after
right,
a while.
Something we couldn't repeat back to you again.
Yeah, and behold a pale horse. Yeah, it's just anyway. So at that point, I started latching on to, okay, you're giving specifics in the Bible. Are these specifics being, are we seeing these specifics happen nowadays?
Right.
How many wars right now are being fought with swords? To which the response.
So the book of Revelation draws heavily from metaphors. So this is not.
So highly specific, but also heavily metaphorical.
Okay. So let's actually draw the distinction. We implied it, but let's say it clearly here. If something is very specific, can it also be very metaphorical?
No. Grammatically, as far as syntax goes, that is not possible. So it's actually not that unique of a claim, though. I've been coming across it more and more, that somehow every verse has both a literal meaning and a prophetic meaning and a metaphorical, like spiritual meaning. And it's impossible for it to be all of those things at once. All you're doing is picking and choosing which lens you're reading a particular verse through.
Yeah.
And yes, there are metaphorical parts of the Bible, and there are parts that, pertain to future events. The prophets is a whole section of the Bible, sure. But you can't say that every single verse is simultaneously all three things.
Yeah. Yep. Because how are you going to have predictive power over a story that's supposed to be teaching you something?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that is a dodge that is super, super familiar. Again, it's just the familiarity of this call. And so our response started going, well, why would your God mix metaphor and literal truth? Why would we start getting into such confusing language?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't your God say coronavirus 2020?
Why wouldn't he give us the vaccine information?
And specifically also, why would your God give us coronavirus? It's
good questions.
Well, because if God is the one making all of this happen, then it's all of the disease, all the famine, all the death. It is all because of God. God has done all of the good things. If God has done all the good things, he's also done all of the bad things.
Right. And honestly, we didn't even touch on this, but it also throws the whole idea of free will out the window, right? If God is prophesying exactly what happens, either because he sees it happen prior to, or he is causing it, either of those scenarios absolutely nixes the idea that we have any control over the future at all. So the same people who hold to this very individualistic kind of libertarian free will mindset are also the ones who technically who pretty much simultaneously hold to this prophetic worldview as well, that everything is prophesied and part of God's plan and all of this. And honestly, the two are incompatible as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the past, I've tried to bring that up in situations like this, but I've always gotten, messages and comments underneath afterwards saying, oh, you changed the subject, Eric, you changed the subject. But that is such a good point. I just don't know when to put that in the conversation.
Right.
But that is one that I don't think we get the chance to make enough. So I'm glad we have this platform to be able to do that. So cheers to that. So we asked why would God do all of these things?
Because we sinned and rebelled against him.
Apparently only boomers. Yeah, I got some flack in the comments for that one.
Did you?
I did.
I mean, I guess at the time, during that clip, you and I were actually recording together.
Right. Quarantine had not fully gone into effect yet. And it was still, what was this, February?
This was back in February. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were still only seeing it pop up in the US very recently, and only a certain portion of the population seem to have been succumbing to it. Fun fact, now the biggest demographic is between 15 and 29. So put your masks on, people.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. At the time,
no, but I got a lot of flack for that one.
I thought, at the time I thought it was hilarious. But then again, none of us could have expected just how big of a deal this wound up becoming. But
right, exactly.
If we were to go back in time, I would not stop you from having said it. It was hilarious, nonetheless. But his response,
because we sinned and rebelled against him.
Apparently only boomers.
Because we sinned and rebelled against him.
Yeah. Which is horrifying.
It's all our fault.
It's terrible. And honestly, that's where the boomer joke came from, was an acknowledgement that this is a ridiculous claim to be making, and it denigrates the people who get sick. Yeah. Right. It ties directly in on the last Talk Heathen call. a Talkeethan episode, we had a caller who was disabled and wanted to talk about disability in society and in religion and kind of how we stigmatize disabled people. And this is the crux of that, right? This is exactly why a lot of people have this like negative reaction to somebody with a disability, is because they equate it with some kind of moral attribution, right? Either God is punishing them for something, or they have turned away from God and are not seeking him for salvation, or, you know, whatever the phraseology is going to be. It's this same concept that God is punishing you and this is our fault.
Yeah. And I've seen it conflated in such awkward ways. You know, I especially around like gay marriage, people are saying, "Oh, well, homosexuality is a sin worthy of hell, but so is cheating on my wife." And it's like,
oh yeah, exactly.
you know, everything makes you worthy of death, and it's just such a weird and screwed up system in so many ways. In fact, that actually reminds me. Do you remember Johnny Tremain? Did you ever read Johnny Tremain as a kid?
I did read Johnny Tremain.
Just
I did indeed.
Following that character that worked on the Sabbath and injured his hand, and kind of carried that for the rest of their life. And yeah, you see that, you know, in an earlier time when people were like, "Oh yeah, you worked on the Sabbath. Oh, no wonder."
Right, exactly.
You know,
no wonder you can't use your hand anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, you were punished by God.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a response that you had after this that I wanted to cap talking about this call with, because it floored me. And well, let me just play it. We can talk about it afterward.
Tyler, honestly, I want to be mad at you, but I just feel bad because the language that you're using is the language of abuse. I came from an abusive household. My mom was abused. I was abused by someone who used punishment to mean love. And when we were punished, it was because he loves us and he wants to correct us and we deserved it. And that's the rationale that kept us there for as long as it did. And it damaged all of us. And I feel bad for you.
That was incredibly insightful.
Well, again, I recognized myself in this call. I recognized myself in the caller. The language is the same. And yes. I know how it can be used.
Yeah. And it was definitely in my church and something that I saw too. And I'm really grateful to be on this side of it. And hopefully, I really hope that somebody, at least someone, can see that call and maybe recognize that, because what a powerful statement, just looking in and going, you know what? This is exactly what we see in bad relationships. This is exactly what we see in dysfunction. And if the relationship that you're supposed to have with God is one of fear and dysfunction,
right.
You know, maybe you don't have the tools to see your way out of it, but it can be better. It doesn't have to be this way.
Right. When you say the epitome of a good relationship is the one between you and God, and it functions like that, then all your relationships that function like that are not only going to be immune from being questioned, but also lauded and praised. What a good person you are for taking your punishment joyfully, or without raising your voice, or you know, you're good because you've submitted. And if that's how we talk about God, then that's how we're going to talk about our fellow human beings.
Well, that is in marriage vows, at least in the church that I went to. It was very clearly said that the patriarch of the family is the one who is supposed to represent God, leading the you know, just the person in charge, you know, and everyone must submit.
Yeah.
And that's just not how good relationships work.
No.
I mean,
submission's fun, but only consensually.
Get out of my head. Get out of my head. Okay, yeah, you took that. Yep. Okay, fine. V, we're already at the end of the episode. How can people find you?
People can find me by going to vroslabianca.com or following my Patreon at patreon.com/vlabianca. I post weekly updates there. I post links to new content once that comes out. I give you guys access to live chats, and just a really awesome little community is developing. So nice. I'm very excited about it, and I'd love for you to be a part of it.
Love it. Well, I'm going to put the links to all of that in the description for this video. V, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Have an awesome week. Bye. All right, let me move over to solo here. So thank you so much again. Click here if you want to subscribe and get notifications. I put out new episodes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you want to see Wednesday's episode, it is already out for patrons. Click here and go to Patreon. It's a way to get early episodes, access to cool things and perks. Check it out. I like it. And click up here if you want to see me going back to basics and talking about the ontological argument with Jenna Belk. I'll see you next time.